I know I'm speaking to the audience, not really you.
Okay.
That's just a point I need to make.
I think people forget the boy child a lot. Yeah, there is this kind of attitude when we speak about gender. It is synonymous with women inclusion, to the extent that the boy has been forgotten. The boy is the one now dying at M23. The boy is the one who is dying in DRC Congo. Of course, women are displaced, and many women have died, not to belittle that. But men and boys are the ones dying with depression. They're the ones dying of drug abuse. I believe also there should be affirmative action. There should be a balance of sorts, even for the inclusion of young men, because I keep meeting young people, young men who have enormous responsibilities on their back, but nobody really recognizes them. When they go to places of work, women are easily promoted because they are women, but nobody promotes a man because he's a man, because probably he is not beautiful, doesn't have nyash. So it's very important to remember that men must, and young boys must be given their position also. They must be remembered.
Okay.
I think for purposes of clarity, I don't talk about men or women, I talk about diversity.
The diversity.
Probably he might not be aware of this, that diversity is a clear and very critical indicator of quality of news content. But let me just bring it back to you, because you're the boss here.
I would take a jump and say maybe there's people experiencing mental challenges.
Okay, so gentlemen, let's now focus.
Talk of diversity, then we should also be, now we should bring the woke agenda of saying, let's have heterosexual people and gay people.
No. I think
diversity.
Let's not digress.
Yes. I'm talking about something that I'm knowledgeable about. Let us not allow people to speculate and cast aspersions here.
And maybe just, if this would make you feel better, husband, we had the sign language interpreter who was a lady, so.
I mean, as far as the will is concerned, that may not be sufficient. But I think that the opportunity of making his points.
Absolutely.
So I guess we can make progress.
Let's now make progress and proceed. Kasmwel, let's look at how the issues are progressing in terms of activism in this country. Do you think that what as young people set out for was achieved in as much as balancing the equation and ensuring that voices are heard? Was this how perhaps you had envisioned things would play out the way things are right now?
I don't know. I don't think so, that this is what I had envisioned, because when we were setting out, we set out with a very clear agenda. We got some results. They were dismal, but we got results nonetheless. And I think in growing in understanding, now I realized that just as the analyst Mokwa said, that I realized this is a political problem, just the way they're speaking about the conflict at the Congo. Then I decided to take a political route, because the political route seemed more sustainable. It seemed as though the conversation that the state was willing to have it within a political formation. That is the direction now I took. There are still very many strides that could be taken. There are very many advancements that could be made towards what we were agitating for. Of course, we had very great success with the rejection of the finance bill, but there are certain aspects which we did not do quite well. And that's why even in the political wing, as you might know, that I currently am championing for Kenyans' rights within the Orient Democratic Movement's Youth League. Part of what we're trying to do is drive a national dialogue that will ensure that even from a political front, we ensure that these issues that we were on the streets for are properly articulated. Because in such a sad state of affairs, if all we will do is sit and sloganeer and take the children of the working poor to the streets, have them get shot, drape a flag over their body, go and send their parents 10,000 and forget all about them. There are unnecessary deaths of young people. I don't believe that the issues we are fighting for deserve to have any bloodshed if we have the proper communication channels. And that's what we said. We will explore all of them. And you've seen us on the streets. We've been very active. Now we are trying this dialogue approach. And if the approach of dialogue does not work, the streets are always open for occupation.
Dismiss. It's great now we have the mix of the young and as well as this age demographic as well. I didn't say that.
No, the Gen Zs and the millennials.
Yes, the Gen Zs and the millennials. And I want perhaps, as you look at the balancing act of how this idea came up of leaderless, and you can also chime in later, Hesbon, the leaderless, the tribeless, but then Kasmwel here has even fallen victim of being called a traitor. He's sought, activism in a different level. He's actually in this very interesting orange color tonight. When you look
this is the party scarf.
Okay.
Yes.
Whereas we are not advocating for your party per se.
I personally am.
You are personally, but not as TV47. When you look at how young people have morphed in this country, are we in a situation, do we still seem confused, or are we heading in a direction that we know where we are going?
Well, at no stage would you say that a country doesn't know where it's going. It's that people are serving diverse and divergent interests.
Yes.
So, for instance, during the Gen Z demonstration, people had different views on what must be done to achieve their objectives. And after the issues were raised, very clear fundamental issues were raised, then President Ruto decided that he must respond to the issues. Mm-hmm. And he responded to a good number of the issues. One was rejection of the finance bill. Another one was firing the administration. In fact, what he did, he behaved what Ram Emanuel, a highly regarded politician in the US, would say, that you never let a crisis go to waste. You take advantage of the crisis. So there were fundamental reforms in Kenya, actually unprecedented all over the world. Mm-hmm. That the youth can organize themselves. They bring pertinent issues to the table. And the president is forced to sit back, reflect, and take action on those issues. And those issues, in a good part, have been addressed. But now, making progress, we must realize as a nation that the presidency is a symbol of national unity, and it must serve national and public interests. Now, one of the key lessons from Gen Z, the demonstrations, was that public participation can no longer be ceremonial, that it's something that you have to take. Mm-hmm. Public participation actually means public participation. That the elected leaders, be it at the National Assembly, Senate, or even the County Assembly, they have to represent the interests and aspirations of the people who elected them into office. Mm-hmm. And I wish that the spirit of the Gen Z demonstrations is carried to the 2027 general elections. Mm-hmm. So that we get a very clear scorecard or a methodology of examining the leaders, whether or not they've performed. But unfortunately, or when you go to the real political space in Kenya, as we approach the 2027 general elections, Onyango will remember that he's a Luo man. And Kamau will remember that he's a Kikuyu man. And these people will go back to their tribal cocoons and vote because of their national interests. Now, national interest here is a synonym for tribal interests, and people will fall into those cocoons. Yes. That is the unfortunate bit. And then a few days later, they'll suffer from, in business they say buyer's remorse, but this time around it will be from voters' remorse. And that is the situation which is obtaining in the US today. There are people who voted for Donald Trump. He told them, we are going to work on the tariffs. Mm-hmm. And right now he said he's going to raise tariffs. Although I understand that he's had a conversation with Mexico. But automatically when you raise tariffs, then it means the price of commodities goes up. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that is the situation which happens in most parts of the world. That you have one or two powerful leaders who come and shock everybody into dancing to the drum beats. And at that stage, voters become emotional and irrational. And I know Professor Will and I have had this argument for donkey years. But can you explain to any rational human being,
yes,
after you are warned, there are a number of people who had presented themselves for member of the National Assembly were drug dealers and the drug lords. And some people went ahead and voted for them. They went to the National Assembly. And these are the leaders you expect to come up with stellar legislation. These are the leaders you expect to understand complex challenges facing the world and how we can address them right here in Kenya. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, the typical voter all over the world, not just in Kenya,
yes,
they no longer vote with their selfish interest in mind. They vote with the politicians' selfish interest in mind. That is why when, during the next election, one can easily bet that up to 80% of the current crop of elected leaders mm-hmm. are not going back. I can even challenge you right now.
Yes.
If you can name for me 15 members of the National Assembly, if you can name for me 15 principal secretaries, or if you can name 10 cabinet secretaries, you may not have capacity to do that because they have not performed anything. But you remember long ago, maybe when you were a little kid, the likes of when you had people like George Anyona, when we had people like James Orengo or even Paul Muite, when we studied history and civics, a student of average mind would name all members of the National Assembly because they performed something. But right now you go to the streets of Nairobi, if you bump into an MP, you wouldn't even recognize because they don't have capacity nor competence. There are many, you can easily bump into a principal secretary and you don't even know that it's a principal secretary. Why? They don't come out shining. And that is something we must guard as we go to the general elections, that we must vote with our selfish interest in mind. If we don't vote with our selfish interest in mind, then we are inflicting pain in ourselves.
Yeah, husband, is this the activism and the outcome of it? Do you see hope as a millennial, as it were, in terms of how young people came up and took on the role of activism and fighting for their rights?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of hope. I see a lot of hope. I mean, whatever the Gen Z-led revolution did, has taken us to a totally new level as far as civil disobedience is concerned. The way they mobilized, the issues that they articulated, how they drove those issues until dark forces came into the whole thing and sort of, crushed it because it became a lot more political, people with vested interests infiltrated. And naturally what we had envisioned and what I essentially talked about, it will reach a point where they'll have to find leadership. And if they remain leaderless, then they'll be rudderless. And people like Kasmwel will find where there is leadership and they will find relevance in those spaces. But to a large extent, I must say that it has ushered in a new dispensation, a dispensation where young people have realized that they can no longer be told that you're leaders of tomorrow. They can actually take issues head on, address those issues. And my prayer is that all these issues that they raised, the rage that we saw in 2024 and it all started in 2023, can be harnessed constructively within structures that are democratic, so that we don't fall into anarchy. There are few individuals that you may want to pick out who have distinguished themselves. But I think we may want to run away from individuals and look at issues. To what extent did they drive issues? They drove issues and brought the president to a space where the president was speaking to issues in spaces where we've never seen a president. And, guys who are part of the establishment were quick to say that this is one of the best presidents. He has come down up to Twitter spaces. And the question was, this is probably one of the presidents who did something that demanded that he had to come and become accountable on this platform. But one interesting thing going forward is that we know tribalism and ethnic mobilization is still going to be a big thing in the coming election. But the Gen Z-led revolution has given people a sense, to understand that if the establishment does not serve your interests, you can actually activate Article 1 of the Constitution, for self-determination.
Yes.
And the president keeps saying that the 2027 election is likely to be the easiest election. Most of his lieutenants keep talking about that he doesn't see a challenge. And for me, what happened last year, and the way this rage has been distributed, you have guys who've gone into mainstream political parties, you have guys who are outside there just doing civil engagements in matatus, using graffitis, and then you have Kebaso Morara here who is doing an amazing work. All this may not collectively end up giving us one individual as a Gen Z leader, but they will sensitize people so much so that anyone who will be coming to look for votes, either at the constituency level, gubernatorial, senatorial, or even at the presidency, will find it difficult to mobilize people along ethnicity, along religion. They will have to start addressing issues. Because the issues of Gen Zs in Suna East and Migori County, where I come from, are the same issues of Gen Zs in Karatina and Nyeri County, where other Gen Zs are. And what people forget is that, Gen Zs probably had this disenchantment with this regime, and they were sort of disillusioned simply because they expected so much. Now, they get into the job market and they realize that because of the tax regime that we have, they can't take so much home. But there's another demographic called the millennials, the us guys. And we are thinking, as we've already established our careers, now we are looking for the next big deal. You want to finish your home. So a combination of these two groups,
Yes.
Gen Zs and the millennials, will be so disillusioned with this regime by the time that it is done, that it won't matter whether I'm Luo, Kikuyu, Kuria, or Kisi. Anyone who is not addressing the issues on my payslip,
Yeah.
anyone who is not addressing the issues of the cost of living, anyone who is not addressing the issues of the housing levy that I'm paying, yet I'm struggling to finish my mortgage, will not get my vote. Whether they are the sitting president or an aspiring president, they will have to address issues. And therefore, if for me, if there is any regime that is going to say bye to tribalism and say bye to it completely,
Yeah.
it is this regime. If they continue like this, they are pushing Kenyans to a situation where we will not vote along tribal lines.
Okay.
We will vote along issues.
I'll come to the gentleman. Let me, the younger demographic here, but let me just read some feedback. I'm saying, hello, George, keenly following on how the strong team led by Dismas Mokua analyzes the real issues. Tuned in from Gongoni in Kilifi County. That is Benson Thuva Garama. This one is phone number from the United States. I'm watching from Arlington, Pennsylvania. Nice discussion. Thank you, sir. Our WhatsApp number is on your screen. There is some feedback that concerns you, gentlemen. Let me read it for you because it is coined with what I was about to ask you. Some on YouTube, Wanja Douglas says Morara for president, and John Ogalo says John Lastborn from Siaya. For sure, don't trust this Kasmwel. When talking, you may think he's a straightforward person. Kumbe ni mjanja. And Wanja Douglas says Kasmwel ni msaliti. Brian Gibruto, Kasmwel is just a desperate opportunist. Never take him seriously. Do you feel, and I remember I asked you that question last time,
yeah.
do you feel that perhaps you betrayed this movement, that they saw a new phase? And we've had what Dismas and husband have talked about, taking the matters and exercising Article 1. But do you think that your approach was not very conducive to some quarters?
You know, I've said time without number that a revolution is not a popularity contest.
Yes.
I do not care for ratings. I do not care for whether this person likes me or not. If we have good governance, if we have a war on graft, if we have accountability in government, I will go back to whatever cocoon I came from. Because remember, nobody gave me a letter and told me now we are deploying you to the streets. And nobody should think that they have the right to deploy me from the streets. Again, I say, like I've said before, I've never hidden any of my moves. I said that now I realize that people are taking a political angle. There were people who are actually coming into the movement thinking that they would be the thought and opinion shapers. And in a leaderless movement, if we were to just paint a picture of what our movement was, when we said we are leaderless, we claimed that the leaders who have been in power do not speak for the common interest of the Mwananchi. That is why we do not want to claim their leadership. When we said we were tribeless, we did not mean that we do not acknowledge what our tribes are, because it will get to a point where for our country to have the collective healing, we will have to sit down and unpack what this monster of tribalism is. I come from several collectives, but one of the collectives that I come from is the Luo community. And you can see the people who are in leadership from the Luo community have felt disenfranchised for over 60 years. And now, for them, it feels, for that community, it feels as though they have consistently been relegated to the opposition. That, until we can heal what that thing is, we can no longer hide from that tribelessness. So when we said we were tribeless, we were saying that for far too long, tribes have been used to divide us. And we are claiming that for this particular cause, we will not allow ourselves to be divided alongside tribes. When we went to the streets on the 25th of June, which was the culmination, when the people took back the power which they had donated to legislators,
Yes.
we said we were partyless, because the parties then did not seem to fight for the interests of the people. Therefore, I keep on asking people that you cannot look at me and faithfully or honestly claim that if I was not your leader, I have betrayed you. Because I also have the democratic right to pursue other methods. What I had promised myself after seeing the things that I saw, because remember, I was in the front line. And I saw things. I saw people make money off of the protests. I saw some of these people who were yapping. There's a lady who was insulting me on some television station. She stole money meant for mobilization and lied that she was going to bring 100 youths to the streets. And she did not. after seeing the skullduggery that was happening in this movement, I said, I want to be in a place where my work will not just only be leading the children of the working poor to the streets to get shot at without any sustainable change.
Okay.
So the only people I betrayed are tribalists. The only people I betrayed are the people who felt like they would have used me for media interviews and now they can no longer use me. And the people I joined hands with, because I made a very calculated opinion. I analyzed and said, I am moving into a space of political activism. And people have done it differently. People like Morara have formed a party. At its formation and its inception, to be fair, we were on different sides of the divide. It was a time issue, whatever it was. But of the existing parties in our democracy,
yes,
the Orange Democratic Movement is the one that promised the most change.
Okay.
And I keep on saying, if I am as insignificant, why do the people still keep on, I don't know how many months later, bashing me?
Kebasa, I know you want to respond, but I wanted to hold it because we really have to take a break. I've been angled and asked to take this break. But as we come back, I want you to answer to this comment from our viewers. Please start with your name, where you're watching us from as well. Activism is great and it has always helped in shaping the politics in this country. The problem that destroyed the Gen Z is hunger, into brackets, njaa, self-interest, dishonesty, and self-centrism. The day they'll be honestly like the Matiba group in 1992, then a lot can be achieved. Simmer on that and then come respond and tell us whether you think you will be achieving what Kenyans and your perspectives as well wish to achieve. When we come back from this commercial break, we have still more on the other side. Please do stay with us and keep your feedback coming.